Sure.
The Common Council agenda format.
Nope.
All right. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I always had visions of grammar school.
Right.
And yes, Rich, they had school back then.
Did you walk uphill both ways?
Yes. With bare feet in the rain.
Do you want to do a roll call, Michelle? I just threw that on there too. Is that necessary?
I mean, I can just note that Pam is absent. That works for everybody.
That works
Sure.
perfectly fine. My goal is to get us in and out. I hope you guys don't mind. You know, if we could do this all in under, like last time we did it in an hour, I feel like we can maybe do this in 45 minutes or so. But hey, with that said, if discussion takes the floor and we go longer, that is all good too. I have nowhere to be other than home in front of our pellet stove. But I guess we'll start with some old business just to use as a refresher to everybody. And maybe even for Grant, since you weren't here last meeting. The thing that we kind of went over last time was Tony gave us a very good overarching view of the zoning and the colors and all that stuff. I love the circles on the map too. That gives us a visual here. I'm a visual type of guy. So each of those circles is 2,000 feet. So that helps. I'll just run through this real quick. So on-site consumption lounges, there are 4 distinctions that we're looking at. On-site consumption lounges, cannabis dispensaries and cannabis manufacturing. Those 3 are all cannabis related. And then a 4th is a smoke shop, which can be anything,
There's actually 5.
There is.
Well,
What am I missing?
micro.
Yeah,
What is that?
so micro, when we first put this into our zoning, micro licenses weren't a thing. Since we put it into our zoning, now the state is rolling out micro enterprise licenses where like you could, similar to a micro brewery, from what I understand, I'm not an expert, but you
We'll
could,
use that definition, Lucy. Basically, it gives you all 3,
you
right?
could grow it and sell your own product.
And
Okay.
consume.
And consume it on-site.
If you wish to, yes.
That
Right?
makes
I
sense.
think so.
It's all
Like
3.
a cigar lounge.
It's all 3 types of license rolled into one.
Microbrewery.
Yes. No.
So the current is just, well, isn't the current like that anyway? Like originally
Some of
wasn't
them
the
are.
place on
The
Division?
one on Division Street is a micro business.
It's micro business, but they're processing only. So
And I thought the place on Church Street was set up
That's
where that was
dispensary.
also.
they have a micro license, but that, what they got approved for is just to sell it. So they might have the license, like a micro license, where they could grow, you have to grow it within, say, 25 miles.
That's exactly what it is. So the state, and we didn't even know about this when we started, but the state has this micro business license, which gives them the right to do all 3. They don't have to do all 3 at the same location, but at least their retail must be within 25 miles, I believe, of their cultivation.
So
Okay.
they're cultivators as well as,
Retail and consumption potentially on the same site.
The whole ball of wax.
The place on Division was originally set up for cultivating and retail, right? And then they had to get a variance to take out the retail portion.
correct,
No.
yes, didn't they?
They would have been okay with the retail. So originally they were
Oh, okay,
going,
yeah,
but they didn't want to sell it there. They didn't want to do that. They just added that in because it would have made their use more allowable. Then they took that out.
Okay.
Because really all they want to do is grow it there. They want something like a controlled environment inside just to grow their product. And they don't want to sell it there. At that location, selling it would have been specially permitted. No variances. They went and got a use variance to grow it. So in that zoning district, cultivation is not allowed. We've been treating it as if like if you want to grow it and if you're not in the light industrial or employment district, you need a use variance. That's how we, even if it's a micro license, whether we want to add that definition in, it might not be a bad idea.
I think while we're here,
If we
Sure,
want to treat them differently, like as if you're having a micro, like a, what do they call it, like a craft brewery.
yeah, where they
Right.
make the beer there in
They
the
sell it.
stills behind you, and then they're pouring their own beer.
So if there was like zoning districts where we thought that was appropriate,
So the state regulates at that point how they sell it for, how they grow it to sell it? Because, you never know what you're putting in with it.
I'm sure they have, they're probably. an
Just like
oversight body.
microbreweries, you know, they
I'm sorry,
regulate.
what was the first part of your question? The state
So,
regulates what?
like, it was a question, like, does the state regulate if, how they grow it? And
Yes.
then they sell it, because, you know,
Yes.
what they grow it with
Mhm.
matters,
And then there's also formulas
with
to
the end
figure out.
result of the product.
There's also formulas to figure out, and it's weight-based, and it's like a pennies
Yeah.
per ounce or pound of what that goes for the tax roll that goes back to the municipalities under the extra 4%. It's not like the extra 4% that is with the retail sales that are just put on top of the 8. It's a different way of figuring it for, the wholesale, cultivators.
Mhm.
But yes, they do have, regulations on who they sell to, because, and don't quote me, when they first opened, they were trying to get all the retail dispensaries in New York to sell New York products. And I don't know if that has changed or if that is still the same.
Now, outside of, the consumption lounges, where are they located in Amsterdam?
They're
Consumption
only,
lounges
yeah,
are in the employment district and the commercial corridor, so the
Right.
light
So the
blue
red?
and the red.
Okay, and are there any consumption lounges operating in Amsterdam right now?
I don't
No.
think so.
Okay,
Well, no, not yet.
okay.
The state is issuing license for consumption lounges, but the state has not released what the rules and regulations are for consumption lounges,
So they're in purgatory essentially.
pretty much.
So while we're on the subject, I would like to propose, and everybody's of course entitled to their own opinion, but I would like to propose that the 2,000 distance be brought up to 2,500, and 2,500 is for consumption lounges as well. And only if we're gonna do consumption lounges, I would personally like to see them only in the red.
They're allowed in red and the light blue, not the light blue that's downtown,
Mhm.
like Forest Avenue, basically. Right now, they're allowed on Forest.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't wanna see a consumption lounge in a neighborhood that's got kids crossing the street, because we all know that accidents happen. And like I said,
Yeah, the good thing about the red is that it's close to like Route 5, and it's just like, I
Right.
guess. But we'll get to that. Can we table that for a moment?
Sure.
We'll add that under like open discussion or something, because I have a whole agenda here that I typed up today.
my apologies,
Fisher.
Chairman.
It's okay. All right, so I just kind of want to go back to the topic of micro business. I don't want to lose grip on this. How is the micro business going to be viewed regarding what niche or title we want to put on it in general? Is it going to be more of because as you know, growing, retail and consuming, they all have their own color code. So how do we want to look at micro business? Do we want to look at it more of a consumption lounge over, let's say, purely retail? Because as we know, retail is allowed in more places,
So I think that the question we need to ask ourselves is more along the lines of, do we want to change anything? Just because the state's issuing a license that way doesn't mean that we have to change where we're allowing them.
Right now.
Yeah, what is,
It would be allowable in employment district, because it's all three are specially permitted in employment district. So that's how we would treat it, like if you came in with that right now, well, except for the moratorium.
sure, let's use this as an example, yeah.
Zoning wise, I would treat it as you're doing all three, that's only allowed in the employment district.
So all three is only allowed in the employment
If
district?
you're gonna do all three.
Okay,
You're gonna
Simple
go
enough.
through one location.
Like
Yes.
this, somebody, if you came in and you said, I wanted to do a micro business and you wanted to put it downtown core, no. You wanna put it in commercial corridor, it's not because of the manufacturing part of it.
okay,
Adding the definition just helps down the road, right, with
Yeah.
enforcement purposes.
Exactly.
But
I think we should.
right now, you can get to that. Basically, you said you want to have it only in the red, so you would be only in the red anyway, based on the way.
Employment district's the blue, Forest
Yeah, no,
Avenue,
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's micro business would be in the light blue.
say Forest Avenue.
Yeah.
If you were gonna, just for general purposes.
I mean, I like the fact that we have, an umbrella called micro business. But underneath that, we have, 3 different subsets of that micro business.
Of course.
And I would hope that we could clearly define what each and every one
Sorry.
means. If you, for example, the one on Division Street is they're cultivating.
Mhm.
And that's the way it is going to be at this point in time.
Right,
So-
those definitions are already in their code.
Okay,
Is it?
Retail
Just
dispensary,
grow it or just sell it.
consumption lounge, and
Yeah.
manufacturing, or processing, cultivating are already in our code. They were put in our code a little over a year ago.
One thing I'm not sure about is how the state, if they don't have it yet, how did they handle micro businesses? If you're gonna grow it, sell it, and smoke it in a business, I don't know what they have for setbacks or buffer zones to each other, where that's given already for retail.
I would think it would be treated like a dispensary, right?
But we don't know that.
We don't know
that.
what if the state,
They're just
applied
fine by
that
the
2,000-foot rule that they
Right.
did for the retail dispensaries, did they apply that to all different types?
That was a question I had too.
But Chief,
Yeah.
wouldn't we, if we decided to have the 2,000-foot rule,
We already have the 2,000-foot
I
rule.
know that, but that would still, whatever we decide would supersede that, right? Whatever the state.
I'm just asking if the state already has it for cultivation.
Right.
Like the ones we were talking about, where it came from was the retail dispensaries. I don't know if it applies to the cultivation and the consumption lounge.
And Mayor, just to catch you up, I was going over some old business and, under number 4, I said A, B, C, D, and then Chief Agresta and Grant had jumped in and said there's actually a 4th type of business. It's called a micro business, which is akin to a microbrewery where they'll cultivate, grow, and sell and even consume all in the same spot. So that's what we're talking about now, how those get treated comparatively.
Those are the licenses we're seeing right now, where they've been approved to do everything. And we just-
Apologies for being late.
It's okay, thanks for being here. It's a tight squeeze back here today, guys.
Because it's
Anthony?
Christmas tree.
Afternoon. Sorry, couldn't be helped.
Go ahead, Rich.
Okay, so, do we kind of all understand the micro business aspect? Okay, and, I'll just move on to what's allowable by district. As a recap, once again, cannabis on-site consumption facilities are the commercial corridor and the employment district. If you guys wanna jump in with the colors, that'd be nice, cause I didn't note that. Cannabis retail is downtown core, light industrial, employment district, and commercial corridor.
Dark blue, light blue, red, and purple.
Sweet. Cannabis manufacturing is currently allowed in light industrial and the employment district.
Light blue and purple.
Okey doke. And a micro business,
I'm sorry, would you say downtown what?
cannabis manufacturing is light industrial and employment district.
It's actually, the light blue and the purple.
Okay. And micro businesses are currently only allowed in, correct me if I'm wrong, employment district, which is the light blue, right?
Correct.
Okay.
If they were to do all 3 in one location, yes.
If they were gonna do all 3 in one location, right, exactly.
so let me, the smoke shop thing.
Yep.
What I did not understand and learn from the recorder last week was the fact that Hightower is now applied for a cannabis license, which is pending because of the moratorium. I didn't realize that if you open up a smoke shop, that you can graduate right into a cannabis shop without going through. I mean, that's the way I interpret that
What are
article in the
you-
paper.
What
Where's
are
that?
you referring to, Hightower?
I thought that was a.
Higher grounds?
Higher ground?
Higher ground, I'm sorry.
Higher Grounds has already been issued a license by New York State. They were
Yes.
issued a license on November 15th for a micro business.
Which I thought they were a smoke shop, but I guess I'm wrong.
No.
No, oh, all right.
Okay.
Misinterpretation.
And where do they
Like
wanna
a
go? In the
unofficial
employment
lounge.
district, I'm assuming?
That's where their property is.
Is it? Okay. Which I have a question mark here next
Commercial
to.
corridor is called.
Okay. I have a little question mark next to smoke shop because I feel like we should all discuss smoke shops and, it's part of the whole process here. So I guess we can table that for number 6. But, okay, so we'll go to 5, and Chris, I know you mentioned something about this, so feel free to take the floor with your ideas, but zoning and distances, currently, it's 2,000 foot, and gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong here, between other cannabis businesses, and that's all 3 types of businesses, or 4, I should say?
It's just retail.
That's all we know.
It's just retail.
Retail
Right now.
dispensaries, 2,000 feet.
Is this locally set the distance or is this
That's the
No.
state.
state
State law.
set? That's
State
the
law.
minimum.
Municipalities under
minimum for state.
20,000 people, the businesses must be 2,000 feet apart. If your population is greater than 20,000 people, then that distance shrinks to 1,000.
Thousands.
Does it say specifically cannabis retail business?
Mhm.
It does. Okay,
For retail license, so here we have under 20,000 people, it's 2,000. If we had 20,000 or more residents, our population of it, it would be 1,000 feet apart.
sure.
And that's by state, we can't
That's
change that.
State license, they can change it.
We can
We
change
can
it,
change that, right?
Make it bigger.
I feel
make
like,
it bigger.
I don't know if we can memorialize that, like say our population grew to over 20,000 people, that would shrink that 2,000 to 1,000.
Yeah.
That's a
right.
conversation for, sorry to interrupt, I mean, the 20,000 people issue, we're below that threshold now. Shouldn't the city ever go above that threshold? That's a conversation for a different day. Right now, we're legislating zoning for a municipality under 20,000.
So I would like to see the distance increase to 2,500 between shops, 1,500 from schools and 500 from churches. I noticed you had 500 up there on the board, but I thought it was 200.
It is 200 from churches, and I believe it's either schools or churches is something having to do with it on the same road. So it's not 200 as the crow flies, it is actually has to be on the same road.
Right.
And I'm not sure if it's churches or schools on that one though.
I'm not positive either.
So explain that again, if it's the same road as a school, for example, and the road's several miles long, you can't be on
Say
that
we're
road.
gonna go on Forest Ave over by where the new car dealership is, you don't measure the distance the same area as school through the woods, you measure the distance going down Forest Ave and up.
As the crow
It's a
flies,
different road.
Richard,
I like that term.
As the crow flies?
Yeah.
I didn't make it up, I gotta give credit to people hundreds of years ago.
you said it now, so you get the credit for it.
We can do some
you know,
calculations on spacing.
That's my recommendation of it. I mean, obviously you guys are free to whatever you feel
I
about
think
it.
it's a good
I
recommendation.
would like to see the distance spread out just a little bit.
Okay,
Um,
write that down.
No, what would that conflict with the state do?
So what-
Can
We're allowed to increase it.
We're allowed to increase it, but we're not allowed to make it impossible for them to open a business.
I don't
Right,
think
that
it,
is
I don't think it
law
makes it
109.
impossible for them to open a business.
We'd have to look at what it does, I mean, you know,
I think.
when you start
Mr.
putting those
Casale could-
2,500 foot circles in.
If we were to increase from 2,000 to 2,500 between shops, would that infringe on any of the stuff that you already discussed with us?
How about schools, 1,000 from 500 to 1,000?
15.
So
Was it a 15 you said?
It's 1,000 now.
I thought it was 500 now.
So think
Okay, I
of
go
it this
wrong.
way,
Sorry.
we can make our zoning more restrictive than the state law. We cannot make it less restrictive than the state law. So if we wanted to go from 2,000 feet to 2,500 feet, that's something that we could do. But we would not be able to do the inverse. We couldn't go
Right.
from
Sure.
2,000 feet to 1,500 or 1,400.
Thank you.
I would like to know how far the current one on 5S is from Barclay School.
Could we get an idea
That's a good
what,
question.
how many feet are in one of the districts?
I know on Google Earth you could do it. I don't know if you can do it on your phone though.
He's always, he'll do it.
Okay. Oh, he's got the,
You wanna know Southside retail to Barclay?
Because all those little things of whether or not it's on the same road, right now the schools aren't in anything except for the yellow. So
Right.
we wouldn't allow anything in them anyways. And if the rule is that they have to be on the same road, then we're never gonna get that.
and Anthony, all current shops will be grandfathered in, correct?
750 feet from Barclay School.
This would.
But it's grandfathered in, am I
It is
right?
grandfathered in, but I look at it, what kind of message we're sending, we're calling 700 feet or
I'm sorry,
750
now
feet.
it's like-
I couldn't.
And now we wanna go to 1,500 feet, and we're gonna more than double where we already have one that has not been a
What was it
problem.
before, 500?
500.
It was 500 before,
To a
Sure
school.
about that.
to a school, yeah.
Grant's got 1,000 up there.
No, that's just a,
Those are just
just a
circles.
circle, I
Those are
think.
For scale.
Let's see.
So
Does
it's
the circle say
500.
1,000 on it? Is that what you're?
2,000.
I just thought that was the way that it was broken down because of that.
It is kind of cool, whoever did that.
That's Grant.
No, it's a good idea. We needed a good visual.
No,
It better not be for my benefit.
no, it's 200.
You just changed it without changing the size of the circle.
Now you gotta take a, now you gotta take a pair of scissors.
500 feet from a school and 200 feet from a church.
Really,
We just using the round numbers.
Okay. But this literally is in
That's a-
proportion of 2,000 feet.
That's it, well, I guess, looking at it now too, that's a 2,000 diameter circle, where they have to be 2,000 feet apart.
Is it 2,000 feet this way, Green, or is it 2,000 feet this way?
2,000 feet that way.
If that's
So
diameter.
this is only 1,000?
Yeah, so really, that's only 1,000.
Oh.
Well, that's 1,000-foot radius.
Yes.
So a 2,000-foot radius would be double
Would be
size.
the, yeah, the diameter.
So it'd be much smaller.
That would be bigger.
Bigger.
Much bigger.
Twice the size.
Where's your as the crow flies?
My point is that this limits us to one in this area, right?
Yes.
Right? One in the blue.
Basically, yeah. And if that circle is, if it was roughly to scale, and it's gonna be twice as big, then
Yeah, I mean, if it was gonna be like, then really, if we pull this off, 2,000 feet from Church Street
To
is
there.
right that.
Exactly.
So it wipes out all of downtown core. It would wipe out all of, Marcelino's already technically wipe out all of Ridge Street.
Right,
And same thing with downtown core. There's more than 2,000 feet apart, but there's Marcelino's.
right.
Right.
So like all of this is already, you can't put one anywhere in the downtown anyways.
With that information, Mr. Chairman, I think the 2,000
I
is
mean, you
fine.
might be able to put one, the only other place you could put one right now is say over here.
I do think that that's fine
Church
personally.
Street wiped out really the entire
So that will just
industrial
keep
park. I mean, there's really no other place other
Schools,
than
though?
over here where you can even put one.
I wouldn't mind seeing that a little more of a distance.
it depends on what the law currently is. If the school law is for different roads, no matter what you do, it's not gonna matter.
Okay. I don't know if I grasp that completely then.
One of them is either
Grant,
church
they could
or
get a variance to get in.
Not
is,
with us, with the state.
the-
I don't know how that would work.
either the church or the school has to be on the same road that the cannabis thing is.
Okay.
If it's not on the same road, then it doesn't matter.
Then it could be.
So it looks like
Road
we're
adjacent
limiting,
to it.
the city's limited to maybe 3.
500.
Yeah, I think you could probably put one more.
Well,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
it's
it.
not 500 feet.
On the west side, right? That's
That works.
Yeah, there's a spot in the industrial, no, because retail's not allowed in like
So what are we doing
industrial. Oh, no, it is. So there is a little bit of spot in.
Well, Mike, I mean,
industrial
the
park.
smoke shops, I think, is the biggest problem here.
That's what I'm looking to do.
I'm sorry, that's the point I was gonna get to. I mean, look, it may very well be, we'll see. I mean, because I wouldn't wanna presume to know what's inside of all of your thoughts, or what all of your thoughts entail. But it may turn out to be that when it comes to the cannabis activity, that there are no recommendations to deviate from the status quo. But even if that's the case, we still need to strongly consider recommendations regarding smoke shops.
Totally, yeah.
I agree.
So that's a good segue for the next item on our agenda, smoke shops.
Well, so,
I just put open discussion on rules, regs, and navigating this industry, because it's kind of new to us, right? So I think, Tony, if you have any insights, please, and
excuse
Chris,
me,
I know you had some
I'm
ideas.
sorry. So just before we go forward,
sure.
are we leaving it 2,000? Are we increasing it?
Let me ask Tony.
After what Grant showed us up there,
I mean,
I'm
we're-
good with the
If
2,000.
you
I
ask
think
me
that's
my
acceptable.
opinion, I would leave it.
Yeah,
I
totally.
wouldn't complicate, I think it's fine.
So I think our recommendation then
This
is,
our problem.
if
Now,
I'm
how
not
about,
hearing it right,
how
is to
about
leave it.
schools, for example? I know Tony was explaining something, but do we like 500 from
I think before we
schools?
vote on any of that, we should have a full committee here. So if you're looking to vote today.
Yeah, we're not gonna vote,
Oh,
right?
I
We're just having
wasn't
an open
looking to vote, I was
discussion.
clarifying the discussion.
I got you.
Yeah,
Because I didn't
like
want
where
to
we're
leave
going,
wondering what the hell we just talked about.
right? Yeah, I mean, hey, it's an open discussion, so we really have to think about it. If anyone's got 2 cents, please throw it in. I don't mind seeing, I like the 2,000 feet. I think it's a good visual that you brought to us today. I mean, you know, as far as it works for our city.
I'm fine with all the state numbers.
I am too. With
I am
with
too.
cannabis, I'm fine with it. Smoke shops, I think we should throw in.
Smoke shops, I think
Smoke shop
that
should
we
be fine.
we can put our own numbers.
Smoke shops,
If it mimics
I would like to see the 2,000 apply to smoke shops as well.
That's what I was just gonna suggest, is to implement some regulations similar to the 2,000 feet distancing.
And I looked up some regulations in other places too that we can discuss when we get to the
And we
smoke
have
shop
to,
part.
sorry to interrupt you. But also to determine which zones we're gonna allow that in.
Smoke shop.
Yeah, let's discuss it. I think that's a good time to do it.
And a
well-
definition of what a smoke shop is, right? Grant, we've got that
We have
already.
the definition.
It's in the code.
I mean, maybe to start, if smoke shops were specially permitted in all non-residential zoning districts with, these distances similar to cannabis dispensaries, you can't have a smoke shop within 1,000 feet of another smoke shop or 2,000 feet of another smoke shop. And do retail dispensaries relate to that at all? Like, do you have a smoke shop next
Sure.
door to a dispensary?
Right. I think there would be a separate distinction because they're not cannabis related, although they have paraphernalia. But that's just my 2 cents. I would think of it like,
Can we put anything in for smoke shops to require them to have off-street parking?
Yes.
I suggest we do that, because that's where the biggest
Definitely
problems
should
with
have
smoke
that,
shops are coming from, in my opinion.
And we could, well, so in our, let me check now if you guys want to keep talking.
yeah, please.
Something on parking for that.
That's where we're seeing the pulling up on the curb, getting out, leaving the car running, blocking traffic.
Yes.
For a quick transaction, is extremely problematic in certain areas.
Do we know if the smoke shops fall under the same, and I know it's not controlled by the Office of Cannabis Management per se, but do they have rules that only allow them to show certain things visually?
I don't think
You
so.
you know what I'm trying to say, like blacked out windows, OCM thing, can't have a cannabis. Do you think that's is that something that we can establish here as a city?
Yeah.
Something that kind of mirrors that in a way, the OCM rules?
I mean, personally, I think that's one of the issues with the smoke shops is you drive, say they're on one of the main drags, like Route 5 or Market Street, somewhere where there's a lot of traffic and it has all of that like tacky looking.
Yeah, it's like Myrtle Beach, it looks like.
The one on Division Street looks like there's 100 suns in it.
Yeah.
So bright.
And there's some other ones where it's like, oh, you could advertise whatever you want, similar to a liquor store, but they could look kind of trashy. I think, if we wanted to put something into exterior displays for smoke shops, like what's allowable for exterior display, like window signage, things like that.
I think that'd be great.
So to answer your question, smoke shops are not regulated by the Office of Cannabis Management unless they're selling something illegally, and then
Of course,
that's
yeah.
when Cannabis Management gets involved.
Right, yeah, and that's a conversation that we also need to have, I feel like too, but I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse here. There's been a lot of illegal activities in smoke shops, but I don't know, Grant, do we want to discuss?
No, I think we should talk about that.
Yeah, of course, do we want to discuss the visual aspect of it too? Do you want to break this down to a few different categories? I think that's important, don't you guys think? Like, if a marijuana dispensary can't have a big pot leaf on their front door, why can a smoke shop who's selling, bongs and bowls, why can they, if they can even, display that too? I feel like that's a net negative for the perception in general. That's just my 2 cents. So, Tony, do you have any insights regarding where we can go?
I'm just tossing around in my head the notion of couldn't that be left to the planning board, with respect to any application to deal with lighting and signage
It kind of-
issues?
That'd be great.
like the
And I think the planning board does an amazing job handling that every single time they have something like that comes up.
Because I know that was one of the
Try.
big concerns.
Right.
with
Sorry, I didn't see
the Church
But don't they have to have something to go
dispensary
by?
was exterior display and what you can see from the road, but
A standard
OCM
or
already
something?
covers all that.
Right.
There's none
You
allowed.
can't just say, well, I don't like that sign.
The difficulty of the planning board is, once they get past the planning board step,
I gotta think about it.
if they don't do what they said they were gonna do, what repercussions are there?
We could codify something maybe, right?
That's a question for.
And down the road, I think that's where we're talking about security plans, et cetera.
If they don't
Once it
do what they
leaves
say they're
the
gonna
planning
do,
board, that
what
we have to
can the
really
planning
look at that.
what can we do?
Right, I mean, I've seen pizza places go to the planning board and say 75% of business is gonna be delivery and we're 25% is gonna be walk-in. And then 6 months later, I talked to the owner and he says 75% is walk-in, 25% is delivery, who would have thunk it? And there's
Yeah.
nothing we can do
Right,
about it.
exactly.
It just doesn't work.
Let me regress for a little bit on smoke shops. I want a clear definition of this because I had this come up after a planning board meeting. Someone said, we approved a shop on Main Street. And the shop is selling lots of cigarettes, maybe some cigars. and, you know, candy and pretzels and stuff like that. Is there anything down the road that would prevent that person from coming in and saying, I'm going to enhance my cigarettes to a little bit more, to some utensils or,
Have you been in it?
You have the
No, I
definition, Greg?
So the entire store is full of bongs and pot pipes and blowtorch
I think
lighters.
you can have that
and-
stuff as a
Mike
smoke
and I
shop
were
though.
well, see, this is,
You can.
Yes, but it's marijuana paraphernalia.
when this was mentioned, that's what I was looking for, the
It's for this
paraphernalia, when
convenience.
I'm not up of the drug world, but anyways.
Don't make it look like I am.
Well, then don't look like you are.
Mr. Knowledgeable. The thing is, when that person came before the planning board, we were all excited. This is great. Until after the meeting, someone said on the way out, yeah, watch it turn into a smoke shop. I went, wait a minute here. Did we just approve something that has the potential of growing into something more than what? I find it deceitful.
Why don't we have some type of tiered program, kind of like an apprenticeship, like we walk with them a little bit until we, you know, just like as an overview. And I know it's more oversight and,
How about we just do like
Cost.
a 1 year, how about we do like a 6 month or a 1 year
There you go.
check-in? Like you get a conditional approval and then after a year,
Exactly.
we check to see if you are doing what you said you were gonna do.
right. Now, if you walk into this convenience shop and there's bongs everywhere, then you're like, oh, maybe
Well,
you're
yeah,
not.
and it's like, wait a minute here. I mean, I would like
I
to
think
think
that's a great
that.
idea, because a lot of times, you know,
We,
smoke
it,
shops.
it wasn't my idea. We've fought this battle numerous times in
No,
the
that's
past
a
4
great idea.
years.
It's a great idea,
Remember that.
because sometimes with smoke
It-
shops,
it-
couple
we-
months
we're-
after they open, they
we've
get caught
just
selling weed.
Come to the point where we see it happen with zoning or planning. Somebody goes, tells them a story, gets their approval. Once they got their approval, they walk out, and then as they're opening up, things changed, or the plan changed, and it still close enough to what the original plan was, but it just was not how they.
It deviates a lot, and it gives us a bad image. And I'm not trying to say that we want to look at the candy stripe girls at St. Mary's. We're not.
They don't have those anymore.
But the thing is, when you're sold a bill of goods, you want to think you bought into a good bill of goods and not down the road realize that we've been structured here, and that kind of,
Yeah, you got hoodwinked.
I don't want to use foul language, but it pisses me off to think that I had a hand in saying, I vote for this shop because it's gonna be great for West Main or East Main Street.
So can we implement some type of, and hopefully we're not deviating too much off of all this.
Let me, if I can, before you say, if
Yeah.
I can throw a thought out there. Perhaps one of the ways to consider handling this is to make a smoke shop, subject to a special use permit. And then, the terms of what's authorized can be contained within the special use permit. And then if there's activity that violates it, then, the special use permit can be revoked.
Easy. Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's easy, but that's the path.
I mean, I think that's a great
No, I
value.
agree.
Yeah.
They
I
should-
agree with
They
that.
should definitely be specially permitted, and I'm looking
Wait,
at our
Right,
definition.
I was saying, until you hear the definition though,
I
because it's
think
not
I
easy.
found, these are the ones I think that we put in. So there's a definition for primarily engaged, and then there's definitions for smoke shops and things. So like, a smoke shop would basically be retail where 20% or more of their products is paraphernalia, smoking stuff, in general. So like, once you hit 20% of
Then you're a smoke shop.
of your stuff is smoke stuff, then you're a smoke shop.
And the thing is, when that person came to us and talked about his convenience shop, never was the word paraphernalia used at all.
Or a smoke shop.
Or, yeah, no.
Do
nothing like-
codes then go in and check it 6 months or a year from now, or what? How's that work?
We-
Tough. I mean, it's tough, and how do I know, do I count 20%?
Well,
Is it
that's what I'm
every
saying.
SKU?
What is it if you can't figure it
When
out?
we put this
Is it
definition
square
in, this is the, you know, the
Let me
issues are.
see, I think that's the one that.
I think we did use square footage because it was, I
I
said
think
the
so,
same thing,
too.
like,
That's
Because I don't have my-
And that's it, that's gotta be it.
we went to square footage of the store because it was either that or I'm not gonna count
We tried to eliminate.
how many
subject-
Coca-Cola cans are in a thing compared to how many, you know, package of rolling papers.
We did draft it in a way to make it an objective standard rather than subjective.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the.
So again, 6 months after they open, they get the special use permit, 6 months after they open, codes goes in and measures measures and says this is 50% now. What happens?
Well, we could revoke their certificate of occupancy.
It'd be a zoning violation,
Zoning violation.
right? It'd be
They
considered
revoke their
zoning violation.
special use permit?
I believe there's a spot in our zoning.
Wouldn't it be, it wouldn't be like a progressive thing, like the first one would be a violation,
It
then
probably would be like a warning, like, hey, you got a X amount of days,
like a zoning violation, then if they got caught again, then it would be a.
or if they didn't change it.
Well, it's just a matter of changing it.
Right.
If, once they're over the limit, they're over the limit. It would be, you don't meet what it is by a zoning definition. It's not like we're writing up a New York State building code.
Probably give them like 30 days or something, would be my guess.
City code is very,
Zoning, we can do whatever we
Right.
want. Normally 7.
that's usually what we do, so.
Yeah, whatever, I love it. All right,
But
so,
again, my question is, it would be codes it would be the codes official that goes in, inspects it?
That's just for the
Smoke
square
shop.
footage if they are operating a smoke shop, not for what they are selling.
No, but I'm saying we could do that, is
Yeah,
what
we
I'm
could.
saying,
Like,
we
if we
could
went
do
in-
that, and
like
we
if
could
Main
make that a
Street-
regular routine, just to,
If Main Street started turning into a smoke shop,
Right.
like say we got a complaint on it, or somebody said something, we could go in.
right, like the grocery store guy, well, he's not a smoke shop right now. But I bet you 20% of his space is dedicated to paraphernalia.
I bet you more than that.
Well, what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. So what about that? Well, he didn't get a special use permit to be a smoke shop. So he's operating out of code is what, that's
The
what
smoke
I'm.
shop, the smoke shop definition has been in the code for how long, Tony?
Was it October? I'm trying to find the actual.
Was it
He
before,
told-
was it
he
before
told
they got to
us
say about?
It was right before we did the moratorium.
In my office, I
So he
said,
was
you're not
already
gonna be a
there.
smoke shop, are you? He said, oh, no. He's a smoke shop.
But I'm just asking, if we didn't give him a certificate of occupancy
Right.
until after the definition for smoke shop was in our code,
Right,
I would defer to the attorney, but I think we could say, you are not what you said you were gonna be, you are now meeting what our definition of smoke shop is, can we write him a
can we
violation?
do that?
I'd have to give it some serious consideration every which way. I'm not prepared to answer that on the spot.
But if you wrote him a violation, would that give him an appropriate amount of time to decrease the square footage of that paraphernalia to put him within codes?
I would think that any which way we proceed, before there was any revocation of any kind, there would be a notice to remedy the situation. What the chief was talking about is under state law, when you're doing a notice to remedy under state law, it has to be 30 days. Under our city code, we don't have a 30-day provision, so many times we have an order to remedy be something much shorter in duration, like 7 days.
What I'm finding is these cannabis entrepreneurs know every finagle in and out of every, and they take advantage of every possible convoluted, they just know, because they just figure it out, maybe we started with the gifting, remember, and it gets right on the edge. So those are the, how can we close those things, tighten them up, and I like the way this is going, I really think, we're focusing on the real issues here, and distances help, codes help, defining a smoke shop, all these things help, and I think we're along the right track.
is that 20% number negotiable, or is that a hard state?
I mean, it's what our
It's
definition
what our
is right
definition
now.
is now.
We have a moratorium in place, mind you, right? Well, we have all things have a pause button right now. So when it comes to all zoning laws, all definitions contained in our zoning laws, we can revisit all those prior to the expiration of the moratorium.
And is that what we're using now as a metric, 20%
20% is
square
there.
footage, or 20%?
Yeah, square footage.
I'll find the definition.
And is it by the SKU? For example, if I'm a grocery store and I have 1,000 SKUs, that means?
No, it's not, I don't think it's
No.
that involved.
Okay.
Is it?
We needed something that was easily just doable, because if it's by the SKU, then we have to ask them, well,
Give me your inventory list.
exactly. And how, if you're there telling they're doing something illegal, how, after they're gonna be to open up their books and their inventory and.
Right. Not so much.
Well, my opinion is the more we strengthen our codes and we strengthen our zonings, that's gonna just make it a lot easier for us to know what's coming and
Yeah, and I know,
Enforcing them,
enforce apps.
because enforcing is everything.
I'm glad we got the circles made, I'm glad to see
Where did the
2,000 feet strip.
Brilliant.
Genius.
Let me go over some
With a broken
definitions
hand,
with you
All right,
guys.
definitions, Tony.
Somebody uses this.
First, the definition of vape or smoke shop. vape or smoke shop, unquote. A retail establishment or wholesale establishment primarily engaged in selling of smoking and tobacco products, tobacco or cannabis paraphernalia, or components reasonably assumed to be used for smoking and or inhalation or injection of any products or other substances. Such premises include tobacco shops, head shops, nicotine shops, vapor shops, and the like. Then we have definitions of terms that are contained within that definition. So we have definition for smoking and tobacco products. Definition of quote, smoking and tobacco products, unquote. Any product in leaf, flake, plug, liquid, such as e-cigarette or any other form containing nicotine derived from tobacco or otherwise derived, CBD or other controlled substances as defined under New York State Public Health Law, which is intended to enable human consumption of tobacco, CBD, or nicotine in the product, whether smoked, chewed, absorbed, dissolved, etc. So you can see that we include everything under the definition for smoking and tobacco products. Then back to when we talk about the definition of vape or smoke shop, there's a term in there, quote, primarily engaged, unquote. So we have a definition of primarily engaged. The term primarily engaged means when either 20% or more of the products displayed, or 20% or more of the products sold, or 20% of the gross floor area at the retail establishment are for smoking and tobacco products, tobacco or cannabis paraphernalia, accessories, etc. So we have three alternatives there. 20% of products displayed, 20% or more of products sold, 20% of the gross floor space.
Okay, so it's all three, yeah, three, not one or the other, okay. I think that's a good definition. Do you like 20%, Mayor, as far as what you see? You know, you've
I
been
mean,
on the
I
ground
think
all day.
it's,
That's what other municipalities,
Yeah.
when we
Okay.
created the definition, that was consistent with other municipalities. If somebody went from, say, convenience store, everyone loves them, they're all nice, and they just start adding in paraphernalia and they become a smoke shop, then they're not in compliance with their zoning anymore.
so this exists now in our code, right?
Yes.
So can I ask this question? Can we now go to the grocery store on Main Street and say you're in violation, you are officially a smoke shop?
He's not ready to answer that question at this time. He has to give some thoughtful consideration.
I would say that one should be enough where they just went to, so they submitted a site plan with a basic floor plan with what they're gonna sell. And if they're not doing what they said they were going to do, they wouldn't be in compliance with their.
I think it may
site
be,
plan.
so you're saying we can?
We
based upon
think
this-
so. We have, in this case, we have their
The site
plans that
plan.
they submitted. And if their plans don't match what they're doing,
Then they're
once
not.
Tony's had time to consider it and he gives us a rule, his opinion, then
I mean, it's a good test case. I want the guy to put bread in there and milk,
I mean, my
soda, and
My
stuff.
my preliminary thoughts are that we're gonna have to go back to the planning board application that was made.
Mhm.
Compare it with our definitions and see what was represented to the planning board.
I think that's what Chief was saying.
Versus what's actually happening, and does what is what actually is happening meeting our definition? I also think that if it's a completely different conversation, if they went to the planning board to open a smoke or vape shop and
Right.
they said, this is what we're doing, and you didn't have any laws when we did it, and now you do.
Right.
So the laws should not impact us.
I believe we have at least one of those on our books too.
So I think we need to be dealing with all of those situations, and that's why I think that we're gonna have to go to the planning board applications on a case-by-case basis before I can render an opinion on any specific application or site.
Okay.
At least that's where I'm at right now, having
Okay.
thought about it for about 10 minutes. I
Yeah,
mean,
I would agree with that. I
Yeah.
would look back at it, if they turned it, somebody started turning into a smoke shop, well, what did they put on their site plan application? We just approved it. This summer.
So we do have one that it was approved on West Main Street. That was put in as a smoke shop.
Yeah.
Right.
Eating beverage and smoke, and up until then, they were just treated as retail.
Right.
Which is allowable.
And honestly, I don't see much problematic stuff there because they do have a parking lot, it's
Right, and there's not houses right on it.
Right.
It's not.
Okay,
And we do have things in place, just to be clear, currently where you guys, codes can go in, do a 6-month checkup or a year checkup or something, correct? Or we do that?
no,
No,
we don't do that.
No, we've never had to, really.
okay,
Unless it was in direct correlation to a complaint
okay.
about something, but there's nothing that gives us that ability.
Would you be comfortable with like making that something that we add to the,
I don't think it would be necessary. I mean, for the most part, our applications don't turn into problems. People, for the most part, do what they say they're going to do. Like, I haven't been to the convenience store since they've opened.
I would think that instead of doing it through something in the code, I think that you would have to put that through planning or zoning as part of the application process, to let them know that, yes, you're gonna have checkups.
you're gonna be subject to a checkup? Can we
If
add
we
that?
can do that.
Can we just, I don't wanna
Add
lose
the
that.
verbiage.
I don't wanna
subject
lose
to a
that.
checkup.
I wanna,
I don't
well,
think,
we're
it
talking
goes-
about
I don't think
special
that
use
go-
permits.
I don't think that goes in the code, folks. I think that's an executive branch issue. I mean, if the mayor wants, for example, and we don't need to put pressure on you, but if the mayor wants to mandate that codes does inspections of applications that are approved by the planning board, then it's within his purview to mandate that.
and I think if anything, it's a good deterrent to people who have ulterior motives
Absolutely.
in general, right? Most of the people are gonna be like, all right, cool, come on in, this is my sandwich shop, and it's all good.
So I think that the distinction in what we're talking about is are investigations that are done responsive in nature to a complaint, which certainly code enforcement does,
Right.
versus proactive inspections, right? And I think that that's a complicated conversation. You're dealing with time and personnel and
Sure.
availability to do all of those things.
If we get a complaint, we would go out, and we do have
course.
in our zoning 250-71B, the code enforcement officer and authorized representative shall have the right to enter upon, examine, inspect, or cause to be entered, examined, and inspected any building or property at any reasonable time for the purpose of carrying out his duties and determine compliance with provisions of this chapter. So if
It's right
somebody
there.
went out of compliance, we would go in, and that's
It's right there.
fine. Like, I go into businesses and talk to people. It's not a big deal. It's not what I do.
Okay.
But
Okay.
if somebody was approved for a convenience store and they turned into a smoke shop, it would, we 100% have the grounds to take away their CO.
Is that information on the application by any chance, so that a person who is applying, who feels like they might have a loophole, they could read right there, like, subject to?
It's in our code. I mean, I'm not sure if it's on the application or not, but
It's
it's
not.
certainly
I'm
in the
just
code.
thinking maybe it would be,
I don't think there's anything wrong with putting a please take notice type thing on the application.
right?
You could always do that.
Are we having issues with that in anything other than these things that wanna be smoke shops, or is it just?
I would defer to Grant, really.
I don't
mean,
think we even have an issue.
Okay.
Like, I've never, like I said, I haven't been to the convenience store. I don't know if they're at any of the 20% of anything. I haven't been there since their certificate of occupancy was issued. And at that time, they were selling some stuff, but it wasn't a smoke shop. Like, they were like a convenience store.
Okay.
I've heard through the grapevine that people parking down there, pulling up in the run and get something has been a bit of a problem, but haven't seen it firsthand.
And I feel like that would almost be too expected on Main Street. Every Main Street has parking.
Issues with parking.
Yes.
There is none. So, if you got into parking, no one would be able to open a business. But I haven't really seen any issues with it. Most people do what they say they're gonna do. Or they do nothing at all.
Is everybody okay with this, or is there any color that anybody wants to add to this aspect of the smoke shops?
I mean,
So what I have is like the display. We're gonna look at that. I'll leave that up to the planning board, is the note I took. Routine checkups, if we see fit, maybe like a 6-month thing, or everything that we were just talking about now. Is there anything else that,
Well, I think that what Anthony suggested, that these people are given a provisional permit versus, the license to go ahead and start operating out of your so-called convenience store. I mean, if you're telling us one thing, you're trying to sell us a bad bill of goods, and you're not living up to what you told us, or you're adding things in that we had no idea that they were going to do, because we're taking your word, that you're acting in good faith but apparently not, we were hoodwinked, or I feel I was certainly hoodwinked. But I think that giving people like this a provisional license, then we can take a look down the road and see, are they really living up to what they told us they were going to do? Are they trying to pull a fast one and sneak a few things in that they aren't?
Like a probationary period?
Yeah, like that, yeah.
That would also require codes to go to every store then, if that's the case. I don't know if you guys want to deploy that, right?
Can't.
Can't.
Physically.
So that brings its own set of issues.
But maybe we should be looking at.
Special use, you had mentioned that, correct? You had mentioned a special use permit?
Mhm.
I mean, I
Definitely.
certainly think
I
that
think-
There's.
Smoke shops should be special use permits
Correct.
in any zone,
I would say,
with the exception of the yellow and anything else you wanna pull out.
yeah, yellow and orange are residential, so, I mean, typically, if I'm just gonna say, I would say smoke shops would be specially permitted in all non-residential zoning districts, which are downtown core, employment district, commercial corridor, and light industrial. And if we wanted to throw in buffer zones, so you can't have one right next to each other, or if that's something we wanted to consider, and I think that, exterior display we could throw on the planning board, or if we wanted to memorialize something on exterior display, hours of operation. Off-street parking would be covered under our current one, where they would need one space per 150 square feet of floor area would be required, as it is right now for a smoke shop.
I'm just adding to my list of issues here to research, whether or not a provisional permit or provisional approval can be granted. I don't want people leaving this meeting thinking that automatically that's something we can do. It's a question mark in my head.
Okay,
To talk about the provisional though, if they didn't do what was on their site plan application, they're not in compliance with their site plan, and I could revoke their certificate of
Right,
occupancy.
it's almost like a 6 of one, half a
I
dozen
could do
of the
that
other.
6 months from now, 2 days from now,
Yeah.
2 years
5
from
years from
now,
now.
it doesn't matter.
so you reserve the right to have a quote provision, everything's
Oh,
provisional?
always, everything.
It's always, it's in our code.
Yes,
It's
so then we're
already
golden.
there. I don't think we need anything provisional, I mean.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessary, it's already in our code.
Right,
A gas station can't turn into a fast food place overnight. The same thing would happen.
Yeah.
But again, if we look at the smoke shop on Main Street, which was supposed to be a grocery store, if we look at their planning commission application, and it shows a square footage, whatever, that doesn't have what they've got there for cannabis, the question then becomes, can we pull, and you said that's something we'd have to study.
We're gonna have to look at it, we're gonna have to always go back to the planning board application.
And which we're gonna do on this one.
Start
Take a
from
look.
cool. I did want to mention something before we leave the topic of smoke shops, if everyone's good. There's been some issues with, the grapevine told me this one, of course, don't know where I heard it, but with smoke shops selling substances, we'll try to keep this as,
Illegal
as
stuff.
possible,
Illegal
that they're not, licensed to sell.
Right.
Are we in this discussion, this moratorium discussion, are we able to talk about potential repercussions regarding smoke shops that violate that? I'm sure there are right now, but do we want to eventually, I know New York City, Chris spoke about this. Chris, maybe you'll have more.
So with smoke shops in general in New York City, it's $1,000 per fine. So if you walk into a store and you've got 10 products in there that are illegal products, they get $1,000 fine for each one of those products. And then the second time, it's $2,000 for each product. And the fines just keep going up and up and up. And it's to deter the sale of it, because what happens is that, you've got the cannabis shop over here who's following all the rules, paying the taxes, paid all his money to become in business, and he's doing it the way that the state regulates to do it. But then you get, the smoke shop down the street who's got 6 months between, and they're selling all this illicit stuff. They're not paying any taxes on it whatsoever. They're making quadruple the amount of money that the cannabis shop is, and they're not contributing to the revenue of the city based on what their share is. So the penalties have to be higher in order to deter it. Otherwise, they're just going to get a slap on the wrist and a slap on the wrist and a slap on the wrist. So there's no incentive to not do it.
So chapter 250 of the Amsterdam City Code is zoning. And penalties for offenses under chapter 250 are codified at 250-74. And this would fall ultimately under that. This is what it reads now. I mean, certainly the council is ultimately able to modify this, but just to tell you what the status quo would be, violations are punishable by a fine of not more than $350 or imprisonment not more than 6 months for each such offense. Let's see.
That's each day.
Yeah, that's the sentence I'm looking for, Grant.
It's in there.
I know, it's just not right next to it.
I don't believe the,
Each and every day that such violation continues after such notification, that violation shall constitute a separate offense. So right now, you're looking at up to $350 per day is what it comes down to in terms of fines.
Now, the city of Albany, I was at a NICOM conference in the city of Albany, I went to a cannabis seminar, and the city of Albany already has a program where their codes officers can go into a smoke shop and issue an immediate, I don't know, they close the place right up.
you can padlock it.
Yeah,
But what the alderman's referring to is not a zoning rule, I believe it's the OCM rule of, so I don't think New York City's any different than upstate in
OCM is
this case.
supposed to, OCM is supposed to
OCM and
inspect.
the Department of Taxation and Finance are the ones who are issuing those $1,000.
And one question I was gonna have
Fines.
was that zoning, correct me if I'm wrong, but zoning wouldn't be the one inspecting for that, the law enforcement would be, correct?
And,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So like when I had 37 Stewart stores, and every month I had to go around and I had to take minors with me and do stings on stores. And I would find out which stores were not paying attention to who they were selling things to, like beer to a minor or cigarettes to a minor or whatever. And then there were progressive steps in place for that, to deter that, to make sure it never happened again. So I would think that from a city perspective, if we had a store that was selling illicit drugs, that it would fall under the same type of actionable stuff, but it would be their license involved, not an employee.
I don't know where that one falls because I know in alcohol it falls on the person who sells it.
I would think it would fall on the,
They don't have a license, though.
well, you couldn't say anything to their employees, but law enforcement could take a serious.
So here's the other part of this, and I'm not speaking for law enforcement then, but you have OCM and the Office of Taxation and Finance, and we've all sat through the things from OCM that came out and said that yes, they did give municipalities the right in extreme cases to go out and padlock a business that is just completely breaking all the rules and no one's listening. OCM has done things in this city within the last 6 months on these smoke shops and found nothing. They just continued business on. The problem that I see from law enforcement standpoint is you have to have a district attorney who's willing to prosecute this case also, and the man hours are going into it, because now at the end of the day, there's still people dying from drug overdoses of illicit drugs, not something that is just improperly regulated. That is, they're selling a knockoff, and I'm not trying to, diminish anything that they're doing. Sure. What they're doing is absolutely illegal for all the reasons you stated of tax evasion, and that's why the Office of Taxation and Finance is involved. But that's a buy-in from a lot more people than just, the police chief saying, well, I'll put somebody on it. Because then once you do, now how many man hours are you going to put into this to find them of, okay, they're selling this illegally.
And it gets to a misdemeanor.
And at the end of the day, it's a misdemeanor. That's what the charge is.
A lot of manpower.
There's a lot of hours, there's a lot of manpower in it, and you have people dealing maybe heroin or fentanyl who are gonna go by because we're worried about this other one that is a quality of life issue and, still wrong and illegal, but it's where does it fit in?
How do we address it?
Do you think the code on the books right now is good? I do, like $350 a day.
I don't.
I
think
Well,
that's pennies.
the key is catching them. I mean.
Yeah, I think that's
right.
pennies.
I mean, from my point of view, as someone that prosecutes these things, I look at 350 as being the low ceiling.
Sure.
And, if the judge, for example, had the ability to fine up to $1,000 per day, then, there's a lot more discretion that can be implemented by.
Can we do that? Like Chris was saying, $1,000 a day?
I would like to see
$1,000.
$1,000. just because I think that you're increasing the deterrent to get them to think about their decision more, because the penalty is much greater.
So it would be up to $1,000 per day,
Right.
so that it's always gonna be up to the judge. I mean, it could always be modified further. You can always have a minimum of $250 and a maximum, not more than 1,000, something like that. But I would recommend against it. I would recommend that we have up to a certain amount, and then you leave it up to the judge's discretion.
I would
That's
like to
great.
see up to $1,000.
That's great, yeah. I agree. That'll deter a
That
lot
would
of.
be for any zoning violation, and I haven't looked at 250-74. I'm not sure exactly when it was drafted or when the 350 was implemented, but it's certainly due for a hike now. We have higher fines in different sections of the code. $500 per day comes to mind in many parts of the code. So I really don't know where 350 came from or when it was implemented.
Earliest, it'd have to be 98 or 97 when they did it.
We went through and we dealt with all of our fines in like 2017, maybe, and we raised a lot of them for like building code by local violations, grass violations, garbage violations. We did raise them. That could have been that one, otherwise. Well, this zoning ordinance was 2017. I don't know. I'd have to look at our old one to see if it was 350 then.
I would also like to see a distance rule in place for smoke shops as well. Obviously, I think it should be smaller than 2,000 feet, because smoke shops are not necessarily, you don't want to find them guilty just for opening the doors. They're products, they're selling other products.
You do a special use,
I would like to see 1,000 feet.
you do a special use variance for them, you don't need to do that, right? Because you're gonna weigh in on each and every single application.
Well, if it's, good point. It'd be tough. I mean, you'd run into the thing, I mean, special use permits, you can't just, because someone wants to open one next door to another one.
Okay.
Is that deniable with a special use permit?
True.
That's what you just ran
I
into.
don't think so. Where if you said, oh, they have to be 1,000 feet apart, that's something that's like, boom, it's like, okay, so you can have one on, Market Street after they issue a special use permit, and maybe one on Main Street after they get their special use permit, and one on,
Sure.
but I think maybe like 1,000 feet apart would be kind of fair, so you can't have like a street of smoke shops.
Can we issue a city tax, just a question? Could we put a city tax on vape products, things like that?
I don't know.
I think that's a great question.
No,
Like a sales
It ain't
tax?
worth it.
Yeah.
ain't
No,
worth
it's
it?
not worth it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a cash business.
True story, right?
I mean, I think personally with the smoke shops, like the biggest issue I see is the exterior display, I think is the biggest thing that I see it as an issue. Not even necessarily distances and everything. I think it's what they look like from the outside when you're driving by.
They're terrible.
They're
Yeah,
on-
just what they look like, and if they are or are not selling illegal substances.
Yeah, which like I would never be able to, I don't.
If they put that on the sign, it'd be a lot easier for everybody involved. I
Great.
mean,
It would be.
But I think like exterior display is the biggest thing I see.
How many smoke shops are there in Amsterdam right
I
now?
think two.
by definition or by,
No, literally. How many are there?
There's the one on Division.
One on
by
Main
Street.
and one on Market, that's 3.
potentially 5.
There's the one on Main, the downtown one, that's 4, which we
Well, Chief said 5, right? Chief,
Potentially.
Potentially.
I think what OCM does is classy, they don't allow
Yeah,
crazy
there's
wacky stuff.
there's 5.
You guys, I'll move on if everyone's okay with that. Open discussion, anything that we spoke about throughout today's meeting that we want to touch on, feel free. I'll roll this into 8 and other.
I
It
did
doesn't
look at
matter.
the Babylon stuff. Did you want to touch that quick?
Yeah, I did. I was gonna ask Anthony if he had talked with them.
So what I got out of that whole thing, what Babylon did is that was the town of Babylon of 200,000 people was the only town the first town in Long Island to open up
Mhm.
retail dispensaries. They had all the other municipalities around them opted out.
Right.
So that's how they wound up with 2 brick and mortars. They did not limit it to 2 brick and mortars.
No, they did not.
And then they are supposed to have another 6 by the end of this year. And they just reduced the distance from 1,000 feet from residences to 750 feet to give them more parcels.
Yep.
And that's why they're bringing in so much money,
Mhm.
because it's Long Island and we're the first game in town and people have a lot of money.
Well, I thought it was interesting that they only had just, in the 2 years they've been operational, they only have 2 dispensaries. They had a medical marijuana place.
Because of the rollout, and then the same thing happened up here in Schenectady and, neighboring communities. The rollout was so sporadic of, some license came through, then the lawsuit came through, then everything was shut down, and then other license trickled out.
And they opted in by default.
Right, because they couldn't get the meeting and the public hearing in
Yeah.
time to have the meeting to vote out.
But I don't know, did you,
I did, I mean, in short, I don't think that the Babylon situation is applicable to Amsterdam, and categorically, we come back to that 20,000 person, threshold.
Mhm.
And Babylon far exceeds the 20,000, and we're on the other side of it. So, and it gets even more complicated than that. I really fear confusing everyone by taking you down the wrong path by discussing Babylon. It's just not applicable
Okay.
to our situation.
Fair enough. Anyone have anything else they wanna mention or anything? We ran a little late, but, only 10 minutes.
Good meeting. Can we, next week, are we gonna finalize it in our last meeting? And we'll discuss all this and vote. in the
That's what I was
next
just gonna say, Chris, is that it looks to me that we should be in shape to have the next meeting be our final meeting of this
I think so.
committee. And
I don't know how
I
everybody
think that we
else
should
feels,
target,
I think so.
at the next meeting, adopting, recommendations to present to the common council. I think that's how that next meeting should end, with recommendations.
And Tony, just out of curiosity, is this gonna be something like everything we kind of went over today and the verbiage and the display issues that we want to talk about and, parking hours, operating, all this stuff? Are you gonna put that into like almost kind of like, common council
Resolution.
agenda that we vote on? Like what's the process look like?
Grant could
Okay,
get him a rough draft, and then Tony could work on it and edit that, and then maybe we could present it to the
We all
body.
know Michelle took incredible notes.
no diggity.
So Grant's
She always
got
does.
nails.
In my mind, I think that we should break it down by activity. Dispensary, lounges, manufacturing, and smoke vape shops. We should deal with those 4 categories, in any order, but I mean,
Okay.
that's how I think we should do it.
Are you gonna write like a rough draft, and when you do, can you send it to all of us first, or is
Yeah,
it?
we could, yeah, because
work on
we've
that
done that
and send it?
before, Tony and I, like, kind of shooting things back and forth. Do we want to, just to go back on the micro licenses, do we want to look at adding that as a definition? The
I think we
micro
should.
Use,
So Tony, you caught the tail end of it when you came in, but what we've come to learn here from the state is, yes, the state has 3 different types of applications. They have cannabis retail, cannabis manufacturing, and cannabis consumption lounge. But what they've recently started doing is they're rolling out these micro enterprise licenses that give the ability to do all 3 things in one location. Currently, we only have 2 zones that fits in. Doesn't mean we have to change and allow it in anywhere else, but we just wanted to know, should we do anything? Because there are rules from the state of, you have a micro business license, but your retail dispensary must be located within 25 miles of where your grow operation is, which are all state things. Should we be looking to add a micro business cannabis license or definition to our zoning?
Yes.
Okay.
Should we be looking into it? Absolutely. Sounds like it's something that we should be doing, frankly, based on the information getting. So I'll work on a definite, I mean, we're still in the moratorium, everyone, remember, so.
Right.
We can add another definition hypothetically to the code dealing with micro businesses, and go from there.
Best time to do it, right?
I think our moratorium expires February 3rd, so any zoning modifications that are implemented by the common council are gonna take 2 meetings, so think of it as a month, right? So, we really need to be in a position where the common council's introducing legislation at the first meeting in January, in order to not
Extend the
extend the
moratorium.
moratorium further.
It's gonna
If-
be tight.
If we're not, that's right, if we're not all the way there by that first meeting in January, then I would anticipate that at that first meeting in January, what will be on the agenda will be an ordinance extending the moratorium for another 3 months.
Does January have 3 meetings? Do you do a January 1st meeting even though nobody's new is getting sworn in, because that's a Wednesday? And then do we do a regular meeting on the 7th and,
I think because no one's getting sworn in, it would just be the regular meeting. Right?
Right, Tony?
That's how we've done it in the past, yeah.
because our next meeting is the 16th, we're not gonna have anything ready for the council, because it would be a consent by the 17th. Literally the next day is their second January meeting.
But remember, legislation to modify zoning, it's an ordinance or a local law, so you need
It
a.
has to be
public hearing.
introduced in a public hearing, right? But it's, I mean, we're not
Not gonna
gonna,
make-
you think we'll be able to introduce it, like,
I mean, I think it's a long shot that we're gonna get there by the first meeting in January.
oh, even better, I was talking the December 17th meeting.
That's the council meeting. Do you want to, do you think it would be privy of us
I
to
think that
move?
this committee is gonna be in position to make all the recommendations
At
it
next
needs to
meeting.
make at the next meeting.
Which is the 16th.
It's a separate conversation is having all of the legislation considered by the common council and me receiving my marching orders from the common council saying, here's what we want you to do, Tony, and then having all of that done by the first meeting in January. If all of that's able to be done by the first meeting in January, then we can consider not extending the moratorium. But if we don't meet that deadline of having all of this legislation ready to be introduced to the common council by the first meeting in January, then I think we need to extend the moratorium. Maybe it doesn't need to be another 90-day extension, but there'll need to be a further extension.
What about the option of, if we're good on the cannabis stuff, to finalize that and put that first, and if we need an extension for the smoke shop ones, extending that only as a moratorium?
No, we're not gonna do it that way. No? I think that we either need to be in place to not extend it or probably extend it by 30 days, is probably what I'm thinking is. Because I think this committee is nearing the end of what its assignment is. And then it's gonna be passing the baton to the common council, and then the common council is not going to be sitting long on this either. So I don't think there's any scenario where the moratorium is going to be needed to be extended by another 90 days or even 60 for that matter. But 30, I can see where that's quite foreseeable.
Would it benefit you, Tony, to get all these ducks in a row by pushing our next meeting from the 16th up?
I don't think
No?
so.
Okay,
I think that keeping the meeting right where it is, as long as it's okay with all of
it's
you.
fine for us, yeah.
I think it's a good pace to move at.
He's got a bunch of stuff to research too, and I don't wanna push
True, yeah,
his
true.
duties
That
and
would-
make him, have all this stuff to get done quickly on top of everything he's doing.
Anything else, guys? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Aye.
Hi.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving too.
I did. You two have 10 minutes?
I can.
Okay.
Real quick.
You wanna do it here?
No, let's go to your